Hey guys, this is Randy with Saturday Station Farm, and today we're going to be discussing bedding. Wood chips are probably one of my favorite beddings for pigs. One reason for that is there's a lot of structure to it. You know, just heavy duty structure. I mean, just look at that. Look how amazing that is. Wood chips are awesome. I just got a load delivered yesterday. These are incredible. There is so much structure in here that you can get a lot of oxygen inside there. And it's pretty much a massive, complex carbon source. Now, when we're looking at bedding, we're kind of looking at two different things. Maybe potentially you have one where the animals are actually bedding and sleeping, which is a relatively small area. And then you kind of have the area that goes around where they're sleeping, probably where they're feeding, where they're drinking. A bit of a sacrifice area. It gets trampled heavily, gets a lot of wear and a lot of use. And a lot of times, wherever you have their bedding set up, they're going to push that out of their little bedding area into another area. So usually when it comes to bedding, I like to use more than I think that they're going to need just to bed down in. Big proponent of like deep bedding systems where you're essentially creating the conditions for compost to happen. And we'll get into that later, but basically when you're having a deep bedding system, you want your carbonaceous material to react with the nitrogen that's in their manure or their urine, and it's breaking down and making compost. Now, if you get that ratio correct, there is no ammonia, and the nitrogen that would potentially run off as manure gets bound up into your carbon matter and breaks down into soil. And that's kind of what we want. And in that process, it gives off heat, which helps can help to warm the animals up and make it nice and toasty for them. You'll see them when they get up out of bed a lot of times, and like there's steam rising out of where they were sleeping, especially in the winter. They have all this massive structure to them that they provide a lot of buoyancy and suck up a lot of moisture, especially like where we're at and with most pigs. In that high impact area, you're gonna have a lot of mud potentially, or at some point you're bound to, from their hooves digging up the soil and then the rains coming. So having a nice 6 to 12 inch or even more layer of wood chips, I love. I love having that, just that base. If they go to the bathroom close by, it can percolate down through it to the bottom. Because it's so airy and light, it's easy for them to turn it up. So they're always turning it over all the time. They're playing in it. There's always a nice dry surface, so they're not in mud or wetness. And you can get a large volume, typically super inexpensive or free. You know, when the tree guys are out trimming the power lines, you know, I'll hit them up and say, hey, we've got a spot, you can drop them off if you want to. Sometimes it can be a hassle for tree guys trying to get rid of wood chips. So if they're in the area, you know, I'll recommend them and I'll stockpile as much as I can if it's convenient. And then when there's not, we'll try to look for other stuff. The downside to the wood chips though, you know, come winter, there's no real warmth in it. You know, there's not a lot of insulation value in solid wood, and even the little air gaps in between, once they're dry they're good, but there's just not a lot of warmth to them. You know, the biggest thing that I like, especially in a deep bedding system, is that structure. When I'm doing compost, I really like to have a diversity, high carbon, low carbon, complex structures. Something that will break down very easily, like leaves, are really great, but they essentially get used up super fast in the soil. And these wood chips just last for a long time. These were also just cut within a day or two ago. So they're still green wood, so there's still a lot of moisture in them. And you'll see, you know, today it's up pretty warm, it's like 40, 35, 40. It's pretty warm out, so I can actually pull up handfuls of the stuff with no issues. But you can see maybe the top of this pile is starting to freeze just a little bit. You know, just that residual moisture that's in the pile, you know, it's freezing. If it gets cold, this pile will freeze up solid. The very core of it, some composting action will happen. That reaction of the fresh green wood and the carbon material in there will compost to a point, and you'll have like a shell around the top of it that is not breaking down, so you will get some heat. But if I were to throw all of these wood chips in there for the pigs as is, it can be good to get them up out of mud if there is some, or some wet conditions, but it's not really dry, you know, so they're kind of laying up against wooden dry chips. It's not ideal, but they are one of my favorites for overall an overall base, structure in the system, and cost and availability. You know, those are really important factors to consider. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.